What's up? Welcome to a new episode of Schmovie. This is episode number 368. My name is Steve, one of the co-hosts, and as always, I'm joined by
Right.
And John.
Beautiful. That was brisk.
Yes.
Rana went in real quick on it, and I was like, "Oh, this is going to be flowing." John's got that dramatic pause.
Viewers are going to know that he had his water bottle very close to his mouth, so I thought he might miss his moment, but no, he stopped pre-sip.
Yeah,
just to wedge in the Ron, but the Ron had a little bit of a. I felt like it, Ronald. It felt like a little hurried because I think you were on your way to getting a sip of water. So just
for sure,
maybe next time drink water before Steve starts talking, so that you're fully lubricated and ready to go.
Okay, I'll keep that in mind, man. I don't know why I was like...
You seem to be very much considering my stupid bullshit advice.
So we've got a cool episode today, mainly because we've got another review that you guys, Ronald and John, were able to see an advanced screening of Creed 3. Michael B. Jordan directing this one. Jonathan Majors also starring in this one. So they had a press screening this week. The two of you guys were able to see it and talk about it here in a bit on the show, which is exciting because this embargo is up early, so it doesn't come out until next Friday.
Insane.
But I think they're probably confident in this movie and are going to allow us to talk about it a week early. So we'll get to that in a bit. And then we're going to go over the required viewing, which was my pick from 2 weeks ago, which is a movie called The Dry, starring Eric Bana. If anybody watched along with us on that, it's from 2020. I think you guys also saw a movie called Return to Seoul, which is opening it kind of in a rollout release, but it'll be opening here in Baltimore next week as well. And then I don't know, saw something else I want to mention towards the end of the show. But to start it off, is there any news, any trailers, anything real quick that you want to mention before we get into the required viewing choice?
Not that I could think of.
Yeah, I don't think so.
Yeah,
nothing great. I wanted to mention one thing I saw literally before we were going to record tonight, which was that Warner Brothers announced that they are going to be showing The Flash at Cinemacon this year, which is going to be a full 6 weeks before the release.
Why don't we try to go to Cinemacon? Why don't we try that?
You have to be a theater exhibitor.
No, man, they have some.
Well, then make it happen. Then make it happen. Then.
Oh man,
it's on you, Ronald.
Let's
go. Let's go. Well, I'm sure they're there to cover the event itself. Yeah. Maybe not. I don't know. We can look into that. But the event itself is really geared towards exhibitors, studios, show. Basically their slate for the year or for the year and a half or so to come, to kind of show the theater chains and the theaters themselves. I guess the product that they'll be able to promote. And there's a lot of history and movies being shown there early, kind of being films that studios are very confident in, especially if it's got a long lead like that. Most notably, recently. Last year they did this with Top Gun Maverick, which was the kind of real first showing of that movie, which kind of just blew the roof off the place and was the start of Paramount's long marketing run for Top Gun Maverick. So it's just a really interesting note because everything that we've heard about The Flash is that it's that it's pretty great, and or that at least they deem it to be, and
they're bullish on it.
Right, the test screenings have been very, very, very high scoring. So this is just another move to really make it feel like this is kind of maybe like their movie. This is the one they're kind of putting so much focus and attention on. And, as soon as it shows there, people are going to be talking about it all over the place, not necessarily saying that in terms of spoilers, but just there'll be a very quick read on the quality of this movie. And I don't know. I think it's a really cool move. So that'll be in April. I think that one article I've read said it's just about 6 weeks before the movie comes out. So something to look forward to. Just over a month, basically, we'll be starting to hear some kind of mass reaction to Andy Muschietti's The Flash, which for all accounts, it sounds like it's going to be pretty awesome. But yeah, they just
unless we manage to pose as catering staff and sneak into this, we'll have to wait.
We could probably flash our movie pass badges and get our cards and get in, right?
Yeah.
I mean, that's got to carry some weight.
That's got to.
That's
what else
exciting.
do we have it? What else do we have it for if not to get into Cinemacon?
Right. Or you don't think the movie Schmovie news organization, Steve, will find the funding to send us to Cinemacon to cover this?
It's in the budget for fiscal 2023. I don't know. I have to check with the finance department.
Which means we'll just go online and look at our bank accounts, and that's
in essence, yes,
yeah.
or our Venmo's accounts that we send back and forth. But yeah, I don't know. I just wanted to mention that really quick, just because I know personally I'm really getting geared up for the Flash, and I think, not to kind of go back on this topic, but just like kind of just this discussion around what's going on with Marvel recently, and them kind of pumping the brakes a bit on their output in the coming year or two. It just seems like an interesting lane right now for DC to have an opportunity to really kind of kick it off a bit with this new James Gunn and Peter Safran fronted DC Studios. And I mean, not that they really had a whole lot to do with that movie, but it does seem like if there's a time to strike, it might be right around now. And it sounds like Warner Brothers is going all in on this. So it's interesting. And I really can't wait to hear what people think about it, and let alone see it ourselves. Yeah, that's the only thing I really wanted to mention. So let's jump into required viewing. Again, this is my pick from 2 weeks ago. I picked this movie called The Dry. This is like a crime drama mystery. Came out a couple years ago, and it's just one of those things that popped up on some top 10 lists at the end of the year. And I think I'd seen like Eric Bana post a couple things about it, and I just never got around to seeing it, and this was an opportunity to finally watch it. I feel like I started it once or twice, but just never had an opportunity to finish it. But had you guys ever heard of it before I mentioned it, or
no
any awareness of it at all? Okay, cool. Okay, John, what about you?
I had seen the poster, and maybe had watched a trailer or seen something about it, but it had no staying power in my mind, in the sense that when you mentioned it, I was not I didn't instantly picture that poster. But when I went to watch it and I saw that image of Eric Bana standing there with the title next to it, it's like, I know that I saw that. I don't know if it was on a streaming service or something, but I saw it somewhere where I thought, oh, anytime something seems like it might be kind of a murder mystery thriller, that's an easy genre to sort of, if I like it, it's called a genre because of my name, John. So, yeah. But that's an easy hook for me if it seems to be a well-regarded kind of thriller mystery like that, with someone like Eric Bana, who's like a very credible leading man type. So I think I quickly earmarked it as something I might want to see, and then totally forgot about it until you mentioned it. So
it definitely falls into that that category. It's like it's got a recognizable actor or actress that it's like, oh, that's interesting, and then it's just that's just a victim of like the onslaught of just the amount of sheer options that we have of what to watch and where to watch them. But I don't know. What did you guys think of The Dry? I mean, especially not having any clue about it.
Well, I would actually want to open up maybe with a counter question to that, which is, how do you guys feel about Eric Bana? Like, what do you think of him carrying a film like this, having that sort of, playing the role that could be played in another movie easily by like Matthew McConaughey or Tom Cruise or something like that, but kind of like an old-fashioned leading man kind of performance, I thought, in this movie, which I'll start off by saying I think that was like the strength of the movie, honestly, was his sort of quiet strength as he went through the story, and then finding out more about the kind of wrinkles in his story and his flaws. I think that was kind of interesting. What did you think, Ronald, of that key performance?
I have to lead with a very important statement. True crime, I normally stay away from it. Kind of does something.
Crime. You mean just crime?
Crime, yeah, crime. So I didn't mean to see true crime. Crime, just in general, but that specific kind of small town stuff, it messes with me. It does something to me. Death is very like real for me, and it affects me very deeply. So I try to stay away from it. So like the murder stuff and the murder programs that my wife watches, I try to stay away from that stuff. But
right.
If you give me a special story that really is telling more than just, I also have a problem with like super graphic murder scenes.
Sure.
But if you give me a good story, I might give it a chance. And this kind of felt like one thing that's really interesting is Eric Bana, being as handsome as he is, seeing people dump on him for an hour and a half is really crazy, because they typically leads don't take on stuff where they're basically the butt of every attack and joke and insult. And he really takes it on in a way that felt like he really understood the gravity of, people thought that he did this thing, this heinous thing. He understands how they could understand, how they could think it. But
well, we think it. I mean, I watching the movie, you're beginning to think it, or at least it never leaves your mind that it could be possible. I mean, I feel like the movie leaves it, that question is open the whole time until we see that final moment.
Yeah,
but it's almost like his redemption comes in the fact that we know that what he's carrying is not that regret, but a regret for all the other stuff, because he definitely is carrying some pain and regret that we just don't really know the heart of it.
Because they were so hard on him, I knew that he didn't do it. It was so weird. Like they were just like throwing dead animals on the I'm like, oh my God. What?
Yeah.
What? This is crazy. But I also understand it's a little kid, man. She was young.
Yeah.
So you feel the gravity of that throughout the movie, the reactions, the way people tighten up, the way when he comes into a room. I love it. I love the acting. I thought that it was really well done. And I really liked even the people that were terrible, even the people that were terrible to Eric's character. I really loved them. I loved when he ran into somebody. I'm like, oh, this is a small town. He's going to run into that person again. Maybe at this bar. Maybe
and it's like it's your past coming back to you. I mean, that's almost like a genre of film right there, where it's like someone's home and everyone's like, we never thought we'd see you again, another 20 years, see you around. I feel like that history too was something that was very mysterious to me at the beginning of the movie. And it's really almost one of those films that it does seem like you could watch it a second time just to know the ins and outs of what you're seeing. Because the first time through, it almost put me off for like the first half hour or so, maybe not quite that long, but I was like having a hard time getting into the pull of the narrative, because I was a little bit like, well, did I miss something? And then I rewound a couple times and realized, no, I haven't missed anything. It's just that they have left certain details open. And then as the flashback started taking shape, it's right around that maybe first act ending, where we're really getting into it, that I started to realize the structure of the movie, kind of what the game of the movie is that you're going to watch the past unraveling at the same time as the present. And then you can guess, but you still won't know until you get to the end.
Yeah, and I guess that's what I was gonna say. Like that's the biggest takeaway from this movie, is it didn't hold our hands. It really just kind of lets the story play out from whatever angle it's telling it at this point. It's not gonna be like, hey, look, this person, it's none of that. It's like, we're gonna give you a bunch of information. We're gonna direct you towards some of it, and you make the decision toward the end. And then there's some definite answers on some things, and then I would have been okay if they didn't explain the murder, the Eric Bana murder, like that whole situation. I would have been okay if they didn't explain that.
Right.
But the fact that they did was heartbreaking. It was heartbreaking. It's just a credit to the storytelling. It just was a really well told. Felt tight, felt slow, but then I'm realizing like, oh, it's at the end. Like, oh.
It's because that bounce back, like with the flashbacks in the current time, like it splits the difference at some
and
point.
It keeps it close, it's on character the whole time. What about you, Steve? I mean, this was your choice.
I mean, I loved it actually. Like I really was happy I finally got to watch it. Your question initially, like I love Eric Bana. I really feel he's like very underrated and like really just underused in a lot of ways. I think he's extremely funny.
I was just about to say, this movie is the one thing he didn't get to do in this movie is kind of show his comic chops, which are so good. But that's the reason I asked the question, is because I kind of wonder, I feel like we haven't talked about Eric Bana much compared to some other actors that have gotten a lot more work. And it's like, why has he not been in front and center in some of these? Like he could have easily been one of the guys in The Nice Guys or something like that, like that type of role where you get to be funny and
or
physical,
like a Guy Ritchie movie or something. Like
there's a physical quality to his roles and a timing that he has. But I kind of agree with what Ronald said, because we know all that about him. It was fun watching him play this reserved guy who's very much like, because he's this special policeman, everybody kind of opens up to him. Like even the cop just starts opening up to him when he meets. And that guy was great.
Keira O'Donnell's great. Yeah,
so good. You know what he was great in that I kept picturing after this. Remember he played Schmidt in the season of Fargo, where he was like, we met Schmidt in the earlier season, and he was like this pudgy, lazy, like a middle management type cop who just wanted to do the bare minimum, and everyone hates him. But when we find out we're seeing young Schmidt, the fun was seeing that he had a little bit of heart, like that he actually wasn't always that guy who was sort of just shiftless. And I thought that was a fun performance. And so I was really watching him in this, and it was his physical. He does play nervy, edgy, kind of wiry guys who aren't like, you felt like he was about to throw up that whole time when he was in the murder scene. And throughout the movie, it feels like he's afraid of what he might have to do to like, or what he might have to go into. But I thought that character was great. But just as an example, that's the kind of character that you get in this sort of noirish thriller. But Eric Bana is bouncing off of him, but he's not playing that. I mean, again, that he's playing the much more quiet, stern character. But everyone's just telling their story to him. When he comes around, you just hear other people kind of talk at him, to your point, Ronald, where it's like he has to do a lot of listening.
I feel like he definitely had a moment though, like where he was like the guy. In terms of like what he was in and how often he was in things. And I feel like when he had that run, I always felt like he was always pretty great in what he was in. Like looking through his, back at that, I don't know, I guess that run in like the late 90s. Well, I guess it goes back as far as like probably the late 90s, early 2000s, but like, Black Hawk Down and Troy and Hulk and I mean Munich I think is probably one of his best performances, but in a lot of those, or even Chopper, going back to what a lot of people kind of first saw him in, like those roles are all kind of, I don't know, of a kind maybe, but knowing and I have listened to him on a couple podcasts where he like really kind of, I never knew it, but I've always felt that he was very funny. But like that's kind of where he got his start. Like he was like a stand-up comedian.
Yeah.
And he had his own show in Australia and like, like a variety show and doing impressions and things like that, which is just hilarious. But yeah, I don't know, like this pacing and this performance is kind of definitely like more of a lay back and let it happen or watch it happen or kind of thing.
Laconic. Kind of,
very, very. And he definitely has that presence though, like that's like you've mentioned it, John, like a special kind of cop, or the presence that he brings from his role or his job back to town with him, but even just his physical presence, like I feel like in those scenes, like even with the local cop with Keira O'Donnell and around some of the locals, like he I don't know, like I feel like he is kind of like a leading man, like he just never really launched and took off like I think people thought he would, but I've always thought he's great. But in this, I thought he was really good, and I really liked Keira O'Donnell's really good in this, and Genevieve O'Reilly from Andor. Most people know her from most recently.
She had that devastating scene with him. I thought she was fantastic in that moment where he sort of accuses her, or in the course of his job has to ask her, wait a minute, did you have something to do with this murder? And they've just had this really sweet, like opening up to each other kind of intimacy that you could tell for her may not be something she's so willingly gives away, and it just shatters her. I thought she played that moment great. Like
she was great.
There's a brief moment where you see her kind of catch her breath and then decide like, wait, what the fuck, get out of here, but like that was so brutal because you want both of them to have that moment. I guess I'm not, it wasn't a romance, but I did want them both to have that little moment of comfort from each other, and you realize that the situation is about to rip that away.
Right.
Keira O'Donnell's wife, Miranda Tapsell, who plays Rita, she wasn't on the screen very much, but she made an impact on me. It's just that those really strong people that are protecting their significant others and don't want, super strong women, really looking out for their husbands. I just felt it. I felt that I feel like we've all kind of felt that energy at some point from our significant others. Just like that protection that they have that a lot of people don't talk about enough,
I'll sing it from the rooftops, but I know what you mean. It's like there's this sense that like you've got some, it's also witnessing someone be a mother and realizing then, oh, she's been doing some of that mama bear stuff for me, whether it's something I've thought about when it was happening or not. But yeah, you do. I think that is something that you notice in your mate. But I thought the same thing, Ronald. She was a really cool, like, seeing that he had her kind of backing him up allowed you to understand how this kind of skittish guy might survive
Oh man,
this world.
There's a scene with Keira O'Donnell that like jumped out at me when he snuck up on Eric Bana.
Mm-hmm. Oh
yeah. God,
like in the
man.
hallway,
like he got the drop on him, and he's like, "Why did you not tell me about it?" I love that because it's like,
no, that was a great moment.
It kind of lent itself to the scene with Rita where she's like, he's a very trusting man, and he felt betrayed, and he was taking it out. He was trying to figure it out in real time, but the way he got the drop on him was so funny because he just didn't see him coming from the corner. He just kind of appeared.
Well, did you spot him and not know for a split second who it was? Like in the moment in this film, this could easily be some new element or somebody that's coming to like shiv Eric Bana. You just don't know, and then you quickly can see that it's him. But I'm just saying it was for me at the same moment Eric Bana has, which is this moment of like there's someone over there. But I like the way he was kind of scared, but instantly is like, oh no, it's him. But there's still a moment of like, okay, that like this past is catching up with him, and you can see that it's very painful to him to have to like feel like he was deceiving somebody that he's got. He seems to like him. I guess that's the thing with the laconic characters. You never know for sure how much people are getting to them, but you can see that he's, that's the strength of an actor like Eric Bana, is that he can play the stern outside while he's also showing you like something in the eyes is telling you like he likes whatever his name was, Reiko.
Yeah.
Oh, so did you know there's a sequel to the book that is now being made into a sequel to the movie, I believe.
Really? Oh, wow. No, I didn't know that.
Oh, wow.
And that it's based on a book is no surprise when you see a movie with this kind of structure. And it makes sense that it would be based on a book.
Same people, or
it said a sequel, so I'm guessing but I don't know if that just means Eric Bana is in a different place on the case, or does it mean like another reason he goes home? We should mention the reason it was called The Dry is because the town is like in the middle of a drought that has been going on for the better part of a year. And
I love that.
I thought that was an interesting, that was an interesting backdrop. It reminded me of, not that this movie has quite the scope and story of like Chinatown, but in Chinatown, the way like the water shortage and like I like when thrillers have something like that going on in the background of the world that lends something unique to this place. This place has a sort of desolate, dry quality. Another scene I thought was really good. It's a short scene, but the parents of, I guess it was those Luke's parents that he visited? The older couple that the guy follows him out to the car and basically says, "I know you lied that day." Like just because he knows that the dad of Luke knew that Luke's story wasn't true, and he knew that Eric Bana's character's story was aligned with Luke's story, and so he knew therefore that he was lying too. I just thought that was one of the first clues we had that something was up from that day. And I'll swear I thought that it was that Luke killed Ellie and that Eric Bana had helped him cover it up. That's the way I thought that was going to go. So in the end, I didn't think that Eric Bana did something bad, but I did wonder, like, did something happen and he accidentally, dropped her or something? I don't know. I just kept wondering how it could have turned so bad. But in the end, if anyone's listening to this to avoid watching the movie, we should tell them the dad ends up being the one who killed her, because he finds out she's wanting to leave town. And that is really crazy because the dad is one of the most aggressive accusers of Eric Bana's character,
is he senile? Like, is he?
I think he is.
Senile?
I think he is senile, but I also think that there's like there's a denial element to his like almost like the guy's it almost seems like he's an old drunk who's just never quite touching reality completely.
Man, so that means that's truly fucked up. That the thing that bothered me the most, that stuck with me the most, was that scene when they find the body and he kind of howls. He kind of falls to the ground and howls. Yeah. That hurts. Now I'm thinking about, like, he was faking that.
Yeah. Right. Or his guilt and pain was coming out in that moment, and it was hard to right. I mean, I'm not trying to give him credit. I'm just saying it's an interesting thing because he could be either thing. It could be, what have I done, that's coming out, and it also could be him going, oh my God, it's a total fake performance. Right, yeah. And if Eric Bana kind of knew, I don't know, you wonder, because he's standing up on the hillside watching him do that. Remember, we see him up there.
Yeah.
So I wonder what he knew about, what had happened. And we haven't even mentioned the other murder is like this other crazy money embezzling thing where this kind of wormy guy is responsible for it. That was crazy to me. And then he tries to set himself on fire. That really went to some wild places. But even that was filmed in a way that wasn't spoon feeding you what was happening.
Yeah.
You had to kind of put together once they were at the hospital, like who had been hurt and what had, and everyone survived. But luckily Eric Bana is still pretty.
It was sneaky the way that he came into that situation, because
you're
like, okay, he's gonna be like his assistant, like the assistant that's outside of the law. That
right, he's going to be the guy with the wait a minute, I found the file. You could tell that actor was going to come back into it though. His earlier scene, it felt like he had too much of a hairdo and too much of like the costume department gave him too much of a thing to not need him. Because I wondered, was he famous? I was like, is that some Australian guy that I just don't know? Because he seemed he had too much character just to be the guy that's in the one scene. Which I'm glad that my instincts were correct. But no, that was that whole plot was crazy.
There's a bunch of like really good acting. Okay, last thing I'm going to talk about, when the firemen got beat up and they were in the back and they basically found out that those two were dating, right? That the two guys were together. That the doctor was dating the Eric Bana's reaction. He's just like, yeah, it's fine. Like, this is, I'm fine with how you. This is what I'm worried about. I'm worried about a murder. This is
right.
Your relationship isn't the least of my concern. But he played it in a way that was so like subtle, so like what a friend would do. What a friend would do. If they're helping somebody, it's fine. Like that. I'm not going to stop being your friend tomorrow for you telling me this. I just love that. I love that scene. And Eric Bana played it really well. He could have been kind of like too. Oh no.
Right. Well, it's back to that laconic thing I keep mentioning, but it's like that character doesn't give you too much, and as a course of that, he's not giving other characters in his world too much either, and so you see how in some ways he's kind of stunted and closed off, but in some ways you appreciate that someone like that just basically keeps it together, and that if he did have this dark secret, he at least I don't know, he's not like a toxic he's not one of those he's not going around cracking heads and being toxic. He's actually a pretty stabilizing force in the story, but we don't quite know how much to trust him ourselves until we get to the end.
Yeah, for sure.
So no, I enjoyed it.
Circle back on your comment, John. So there is a sequel, and it sounds like it maybe is already done.
Okay.
Wow. It's called Force of Nature. And it was filming in the summer of last year. And something to note about The Dry, I guess the reason they could make this sequel to the book series into a film was that The Dry was, what did it say? The top 3 films in the country in Australia for the first 5 weeks, which is a pretty rare feat for like a locally produced film.
Right.
But that it was it finished with a $20.1 million local box office haul, making it the biggest independent Australian release of 2021, behind only Hollywood-backed Peter Rabbit 2. Which made $22 million. So the COVID era box office for Australia, it's the 5th highest grossing film. So for a movie, locally grown, shot everything there. This movie was a big hit there, at least. So I mean, I guess that's kind of where we're at in terms of a sequel. And in the sequel, it looks like Anna Torv is going to be playing one of the characters, which is a nice bonus.
No, she's always great. Yeah.
So the movie's in post-production now. So I'm guessing, at some point this year, probably later this year, we might see this movie. That'd be awesome. I didn't even realize it was a sequel to it. But yeah, I definitely would recommend it if you can find it. I think I said last time it was on, I don't know where you guys watched it, but I know it's available through the Showtime app. If you have Showtime, that's where I watched it. But video on demand channels and everywhere else, but you can check it out there. Maybe before Force of Nature comes out, you can watch it.
Yeah, it's like a premium priced rental, but I think it's well worth, especially,
I think it's worth it.
Yeah, it's like $10 or whatever. Google Play, and then it's $12.99 on Apple TV. So I mean, it's priced like a movie ticket.
Sure.
But you probably have a nice enough television that you can imagine that's what you're having is a movie experience. But I definitely think it's worth sitting down and like if you are in the mood for that kind of adult drama / thriller type film that's going to not insult your intelligence. I think this is that movie.
Yeah, for sure.
All right, who's up next?
I'm up next.
Okay, what we got?
I'm going to throw back to when we started this thing. I think it was the kickoff. Ronald sort of started with an outlier. He started by breaking the rules because he made us watch all 6 episodes of a British television show this season of season 1 of The Responder. Okay. And that's always kind of rung in my head is like, well, wouldn't necessarily want to give us 6 hours again in a week. But then I thought, well, some shows aren't an hour long. And there's one show that I've actually been wanting to rewatch recently. We've probably talked about it on the show over the years, but I don't know that we've ever really done a segment on it. This is a show that is connected in its lineage. It predates the television show, The Mighty Boosh. It predates the IT Crowd, but it's got threads of those shows running through it. It's got threads running through to What We Do in the Shadows. And I just am really in the mood to revisit Garth Marenghi's Darkplace.
Ooh, such a good pick.
Which is a 6-episode show that was 30-minute episodes. And I just think that it's such a fun concept. The idea is that a Stephen King or Dean Koontz-like writer in the 80s had a television show that he produced. And now it's being like, you're seeing like the presentation of this like 6 episodes of this. It's a silly show set in a hospital, but every episode is kind of a self-contained supernatural mystery, but it's made to look like a cheesy artifact of the late 70s, early 80s of British television as presented by this pompous writer who, likens himself. He says, I don't think of myself as a writer. I consider myself a dream weaver, and so it's introduced by him and his agent, I believe, played by Richard Ayoade. Who is hilarious in this show as Dean Lerner, I believe is the character's name. I'm kind of pulling all this from memory. I have not sat back down, but I just have been in the mood to revisit it. And I think it's out there. It seems like it's pretty easy to watch. And like I said, it's 6 half-hour episodes, so it's just like watching a long movie. So yeah, Garth Marenghi's Darkplace is my required viewing.
It looks like it's included with Amazon Prime Video. The first season is on there if you have that.
It's like one of my favorite shows ever.
It's one of those great British shows, isn't it, Ronald? Like the way British television can be so creative and so based on a particular comedian's style and so experimental, and they only have to go for 6 episodes and they usually get to control the whole, I don't know, it's the creative control and quality control involved in only producing 6 episodes is so, I don't know, I wish more American shows could do that because it seems like it lets the whole thing stay kind of, you don't get as much material obviously to chew over, but it's usually more consistent and you feel like you had a good meal when it's done.
Yeah, man. Big
sounds fun. Just add it to the queue. All right. So why don't you two talk to us about Creed 3?
You feeling strong now, Ronald?
I am feeling strong. But stop punching me in my fucking shoulder.
That's apparently that's if you go to work on a guy's arm, I don't think I've quite seen that in a boxing movie before.
It is the dirtiest thing you could do. It's so dirty. I just don't see it in boxing. And you get points. Like it's so dirty. It's such a Creed 3 Jordan Michael B. Jordan's directorial debut.
Yes.
Wowzer. We got access to it. We got to see it early.
We poured one out for Steve.
We poured one out for you, man. There's one more press screening. You think about going to that one, Steve? How you feeling?
No, I'll be at Disney.
You're going to Disney? Okay.
Poor guy. He'll be at Disney.
Oh, too bad.
That sounds so fun. Here's what I'm gonna say. If this is the first thing I'm gonna put out there. I liked it so much that I'm probably going to try to go to the next press screening if I can go.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, that's the first thing I'm going to say. John, what'd you think about it initially?
I had just caught up and watched Creed 2 the day that I went to see Creed 3. So I had come out, I had enjoyed Creed 2 and thought that was good, but serviceable, not as good as Creed, but had some moments that were really nice. And I thought was filmed beautifully. but I guess so. What I was coming into this with, knowing it was Jonathan Majors playing the antagonist of this film, and knowing it was Michael B. Jordan directing, I guess I was kind of looking forward to seeing how those two things panned out. Like how does Michael B. Jordan put together this movie after being the focus of this franchise? And also Jonathan Majors is somebody who has become one of my favorite actors to watch because he's so magnetic and he does so much, but he usually does it with a point and with some taste. And he loves throwing all these flourishes into a character like Kang that we just saw last week in Quantumania. I was really looking forward to seeing him do something more grounded and build a character, in that sense. And so I think those were the two things that I was going into this movie thinking was, I wonder, and also thinking, I wonder if it's going to be better than Creed 2, just because, like I said, Creed 2 was perfectly good, but it just reminded me, and I said this before we watched Creed 3, Ronald, that like the Rocky series into the Creed series, which we can kind of consider one big mega franchise, it is one of those sort of consistent. I mean, I don't know that I've seen, there might be a couple of Rocky films that I haven't seen, but it feels like a more consistent franchise, just in the sense of there's a formula, there's a certain kind of heart that it has, there's a certain kind of way of framing a boxing match that these movies have. So having seen Creed 2 and liked it a lot, I was really going into this one going like, all right, I hope this one cinches the deal and does something a little more emotional and a little more powerful. And I think it did. I mean, I easily think this is a superior film to Creed 2. Maybe as good or better than Creed, the first one. I don't know. I just think the heart of that relationship between Damian Anderson, Jonathan Majors' character, and Creed in this film, it's so good. Like there's one scene, Steve, of them sitting in a diner having a meal together for the first time in years, these old friends. And it's a fantastic scene. Like both guys are given every little bit of nuance and juice to these two characters who are kind of feeling each other out after, and one of them has one agenda and the other one has a different, the scene I'm talking about, obviously, Ronald. It's just, it's a great moment. And it really made me think that's great when you can leave a movie and what you're thinking about is like a quiet moment of just realistic acting between two great performers. Like Michael B. Jordan, he's so pumped up now. You sort of forget that what made us love him in the first place is that the guy is a great actor. And I'm not saying that's not on display in some of his more muscly roles. I'm just saying that this is like, I thought he was fantastic in this movie.
Yeah, that's one of the things you'll take away from it. Sure, man. Like Jonathan Majors is skyrocketing in this movie. He is electric on the screen. But the only way that this works is if Michael B. Jordan carries the emotional weight of it, right? One of the things that the thread of this is kind of survivor's remorse. It's handled in a way that I honestly have never seen with two black leads, where no one gets shot. I mean, sure, it involves guns, but no one dies by a gun. The issues are handled with nuance, believe it or not. Like Keenan, what's his brother? The original director,
Ryan Coogler.
Keenan Coogler has gone through this before. Like, there's no doubt. Like, he wrote it. Like, it's so real that I was telling John that I've had these conversations. I've been at that table, and some of it is just it's a super simple idea that anybody can relate to. When you come from humble beginnings and you find a way to make it out of your situation, you sometimes have this amazingly deep guilt about that change, and I think that anybody can relate to that, and it's handled in such a cool way, and Michael B. Jordan's directing is just it feels a little like shorthanded at some parts, a little weird at some. One thing I will complain about, I have to complain about this, is the last fight and the way it's shot.
You're talking about the sort of dream world sort of.
I don't want to give that away, but some weird stuff they do. They're doing some weird stuff, and we got to tell you ahead of time because it's not regular. It's not a regular fight scene. So, like, even when John says dreamlike, you still will have no idea what the hell we're talking about. But it is shot in like a dreamlike way that's just so maybe too artsy. It feels like someone trying to put their stamp on something that you already did through the amazing directing that you did for the first hour 10 of the movie, So
I agree. I want to say one thing too about that final fight. I think the final fight in a Rocky film or a Creed film is obviously this huge scene that they have to figure out some way now to make a new version of something that they now have done, what, 9 times before, 8 times before.
Right.
So it's like because we know the formula, and you could sort of write out the rough sketch of this movie from the beginning. Like if you watch the first 15 minutes, you could sort of predict basically what's going to happen. You might guess a little wrong in one way or the other. But I think that what we're talking about, that visualization of the fight, it is an attempt, Ronald, to bring something new to something that could feel basic and formulaic. I think it's the reason why I think it's worth mentioning is in relation to his directing, though, is because it is almost like a rare stumble step for this movie, because it feels like it's a lack of confidence in the drama of the situation, that you need to present it in a different way rather than just doing what they've always done. And up to that moment, some of the fighting in this movie I thought may have been directed in a more exciting way than Creed 2. I wasn't really sure, but that was something I actually worried about with this movie, was with Michael B. Jordan being a first-time director, are we going to lose some of that like polish and sheen that the previous 2 Creed movies had? But the second Creed movie was directed by someone whose name I mean, I don't know. It's Ryan Coogler obviously did the first one. The second one's kind of built on the template of the first one, but I feel like this movie feels more like a director's movie than the second one did. Like it actually feels like, with touches like that, some of which work for me and some of which don't, but at least with touches like that, you feel like Michael B. Jordan is doing something as a director. And outside of a few little things like that, I felt like, oh wow, I wouldn't have known this was directed by an actor. I don't know why I feel like there's certain marks of a movie that you can sort of feel when an actor directed it. There's a certain like, sometimes they do kind of showy things with a camera that feel like this is a pretty good director's idea of a cool camera move, but it might be something a real director, a more studied director would smooth out and maybe would not do gimmicky shots or whatever. But this movie's not gimmicky, and it doesn't overly focus on Michael B. Jordan's character the way that you would think a Vanity Project would do. So I think, what you're talking about, Ronald, is a weird moment that like it's one of the few moments that kind of take you out of the human story. And I think it's an attempt to bring you further in, which is kind of an odd thing, but but the choreography is great. I mean, outside of moments like that, I think there's some really good, like Jonathan Majors is so interesting to watch. He just does things that I don't know if I've seen someone do in one of these boxing movies before.
Yeah, it's
not just punching people in the arm.
Yeah, his fighting style is nuts. One thing I will say, because they're probably people that are wondering, hey, I've heard the rumors. Sylvester Stallone is not going to be in this movie. He was sad and disappointed. What makes up for that energy? Wood Harris. Wood Harris steps up as Duke, but he's kind of like a old grouchy version of himself. He's like,
Steve, it feels like they aged him up. It feels like every other character is just kind of playing, like Tessa Thompson, Michael B. Jordan, they're just themselves. But with Wood Harris, they went ahead and decided he's older now because he's like got the gray. And then they flash back, and in the flashback, he looks like the other characters are kids, or Michael B. Jordan's a kid. But Wood Harris looks like he does just kind of in Creed 2, sort of. So it kind of feels like they retroactively decided in this movie. Now he's old, but I do think he gets to play a little bit of grumpiness in this movie that I thought was kind of half funny, and half of the time he's kind of the voice of reason. Don't you think, Ronald? He can kind of see the train wreck coming from a mile away.
He's the audience. He's like, you're old, you're slow, you're dumb. You don't know what you're doing. There's a lot of that. But it's like Wood Harris, you know what it feels like? Some of the moments on The Wire where he was being kind of a slick, cool person, but like dialed up. It's like, this is if he's out the game and he's so good in this, man.
Yeah, he really is.
He's so good.
So much so, Ronald, that I'll echo what you're saying. I sort of thought I missed Sylvester Stallone, but then I tried to picture where he would have been in this movie, and it would have been, I mean, I was glad this movie didn't lay it on too thick. I was glad this movie clocked in at around 2 hours and not 2.5 hours. So it's like, I don't know where you would have fit in Sylvester Stallone's story or an arc for Rocky. And so to me, it feels like keep a character out of a movie rather than just give him a token cameo. You know what I mean? Yeah. But the notion that he's now walked away and would never do it again, that's sort of a bummer, because it feels like if you did there are characters in this movie that are coming back from previous movies that you might not expect. And I like that idea that there's this little Rocky / Creed universe that you now have a ton of characters you can pull in, like using the Ivan Drago in the second one. So it's a bummer. Sylvester Stallone really feels hurt, but I feel like Creed 2 gives him a really great send-off moment. I don't know if you remember that moment where he's sitting he's in silhouette in the foreground, sitting looking up at the ring, and Creed has just won, and they're all lit up and nice, and it's like a painting. He's silhouetted, and he kind of straightens his hat. And I think that's the last Rocky moment we get, except for like a brief moment of him like walking into his apartment while Creed is narrating. But like, it's a great send-off, and it felt like to me, if this is the last time we see this character, they visualized him passing the torch beautifully in that scene. So it's a bummer to think that Sylvester Stallone would feel left out, rather than think it's kind of cool to say that Rocky got to ride off into the sunset.
Yeah.
And he's not dead yet. You can always bring him back in. What's weird is I don't think they mention him, do they? Like maybe once, like in passing.
I think they in pass. Oh yes, he did, because he mentioned that Rocky took a chance on Creed.
Oh right.
Or
no,
the
Creed
other
took
way
a
around.
chance on Rocky.
Creed took a chance on Rocky. But yeah, he kind of casually says it once or twice, and then you don't hear about him again. So
yeah,
you will get your fill of grumpy energy in the form of Wood Harris's Duke character. He's so good, man. I had an issue with Tessa Thompson sometimes.
Man, there's something about her. I can't, like, she's one of the few good people that I like that doesn't convince me that much, you know. And she definitely she puts a little too much of a spin on her lines or something. She just doesn't feel like she's quite in the same universe as everybody else.
Her Philly accent in the first one was horrific. The second one, she kind of slowed up, but she tried to do it a little bit. And now she's just like the way that Madonna moved to London and now she has a British accent. She has kind of like that famous accent. It's just like what wealth brings you, you know. And
I honestly thought she was supposed to be like have like West Indian or like Jamaican descent or something. I didn't know she was doing a Philly accent. When I watched Creed 2, I couldn't remember. Wait, where's she supposed to be from? So yeah, but I mean, I think that her British accent as a Valkyrie in the Thor movies is not that great either. We just like Tessa Thompson. She's one of those people. Steve, we were talking about this. It's like people that we love that aren't great with accents. If you start thinking about it, there are some great actors that just do weird accents. Like Anthony Hopkins sometimes will pull a really weird accent out. Ewan McGregor's American accent is very much like, hey, hi guys, I don't know what's going on. Hey, I'm from America, just like the rest of you, you know? And it's just like, sometimes great actors just don't nail it, but it doesn't mean they're not doing a good performance. I don't know. It's a funny little difference. It's not always about mastering the accents. So
right.
It's me, Ewan McGregor, the American.
So funny. Oh shoot.
But yes, I guess we're saying go ahead, everybody. I mean, but I feel like you know already, if you love these movies, this is another. I mean, Steve, what do you think about that? That this is just kind of a solid franchise that, like, you kind of know what you're getting on some level, and it usually pays off. It usually has some moment of heft or emotional payoff, at least.
I mean, for sure. I mean, I think across Rocky and Creed, you know, whatever comes of the future of the Creed franchise, or, you know, you mentioned Drago. I think they're supposed to be doing like a Ivan Drago spinoff thing. But I mean, yeah, I think across this whole interconnectivity of a Rocky, Creed, Adonis franchise, it's the kind of thing where, like, yeah, I'll see every single one of them, you know, especially loving Creed and Creed 2. I'm very excited to see this one. And obviously the Jonathan Majors factor is, he's like the moment right now, you know, he's like the guy right now. And
I love it.
The reality of, like, you know, back-to-back weeks within the span. I saw somebody comment, like, in the span of 3 weeks or 2 weekends or whatever it is, that like he steals the spotlight from the two leads of big tentpole franchise movies.
Yeah, man.
But yeah, I don't know, it's consistent. I mean, these boxing movies are great. I mean, they focus a lot on character stuff. They have great fight sequences, and you know, there's a sentimentality to these movies, you know, that I think works really well. And I think there's like a different kind of vibe with the Creed franchise, and I think it works for today a lot better than Rocky would.
Yeah, right.
And
totally.
I don't know. I think it's very bankable, and I'm glad to see that you guys both seem to really enjoy it.
Oh, we didn't mention his daughter.
Oh God. So great.
Okay, this is the last thing, man. The daughter.
Well, there was actually one other thing I wanted to mention, but yeah, mention the daughter, because this is incredible.
Mila,
the daughter. Yeah,
Mila Davis Kent, who plays Amara Creed, is just a force, man. She is the emotional strings in this movie. Besides the relationship between Diamond Dame and Adonis Creed, just a special relationship that Adonis has with.
It's so cute and endearing to see him with his daughter. I mean, the way he is with her is just perfect. If you like it's like you don't need to see more evidence he's a good guy, but the way he is with his daughter is just adorable. Their relationship and the way that she's kind of got his number, but at the same time she looks up to him so much, and I think that puts him in a real precarious position because he has to think about what she sees when she sees him do what he does,
Right.
How she's influenced by it. It's a real subtle thing almost that gains power throughout the movie. Well, Ronald, I wanted to mention one thing. There were two things at the side of this. Is that the humor of this movie, that we had a little laughing boy down the aisle from us. It was, Steve, it's been so long since we've been out to these physical screenings. We haven't had like a fellow audience member report.
God.
But this guy thought everything was this funny. Every 10 seconds, he went, but there would be stuff that half of the time he seemed to be laughing. Correct me if I'm wrong, Ronald. Like at real emotional moments that made him uncomfortable, and then the other half, or that he thought were corny or something. And then the other half of the time, it would be things that were actually funny. But it was a steady like leak of air out of this guy the whole movie. And so I just wanted to celebrate that because that was a new one for me.
It would be like Jonathan Major's character is like, you know how it feels to do 18 years in jail. What? Like, why are you laughing at his 18 years in prison? It was so strange, man.
And then I heard you laughing a few times, and then we started laughing back and forth. The guy would do it, and then we would laugh. But the other thing, I was speaking of the humor of this movie. I heard you laugh at a couple moments that I laughed too, Ronald. And I think what we were laughing at was something Jonathan Majors does with his face when he's like watching somebody, and his eyes are like half closed. He's like blasé, and he's got this sort of like.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about? We laughed at there's 2 or 3 moments where he's like watching somebody and he's figuring out what he's about to do. And he's got this kind of like, almost like he's going without doing that. But it's just so something good, he does. Man. There's like a little sideways, but I wondered if I just wanted to catalog that moment.
So
was
good.
That what you're laughing at in those moments too? Was just something he's doing with his face where he's like, how would you describe that look? What is that look?
I don't know, man. It's just like, he had a clear objective from the moment that he saw Adonis Creed. Yes. And it just continues. And there's a point where the last fight where I swear he morphed into Mike Tyson. It's like his face got, like, if they had a biopic and Jamie Foxx didn't play him, I could see him playing Mike Tyson. He just kind of lost his shit and his face was kind of like, rah! The way that Mike Tyson used to lose his shit before he knocked somebody's body into an eternal sleep.
Or bit their ear off.
Yeah, or bit their ear. Yeah, but it's a special movie, man. Check it out, Steve.
I certainly will. What else? You guys go ahead and keep going. Return to Seoul. What was up with this one?
This one's been on your radar for a long time, right, Ronald? So let's why don't you start us off?
Let me look up the director's name because I don't want to probably mess it up, but I'm not gonna. Davy Chow.
Yeah.
Davy Chow and Park Ji Min is the actress who plays Frederic.
Freddie.
Frederic Benoit, aka Freddie, who was a Korean infant that was adopted by some people in France. There seemed to be like a program that connected to Paris and specifically this part of Seoul, this adoption agency. And it really takes place a couple times during her life, like these kind of fractions of her life.
I think it's spread out over about an 8-year period.
Yes, 8 years. But the beginning is right as she enters Seoul, kind of pops up there. And I think there's a force kind of maybe bigger than herself that's kind of pushing her toward it to look into her family's background and where she comes from.
But we see that she's making these decisions to visit Seoul and to look up her family. She makes them in a very like blasé way. she's being very impulsive about it. And I feel like it's interesting that the movie finds a way to comment on it by saying this isn't really how people do this. You know, people don't usually put themselves through these potentially emotionally traumatizing experiences without like getting ready for it, both visiting your home country for the first time and seeing your biological parents. Like I feel like the movie made a subtle point that she kind of went about it wrong for her own mental health and without really thinking about what she was doing. But it's hard not to be sympathetic to her story as it unfolds. And that's the first visit, and then she comes back, right? Like it's 2 years later or something.
Yeah, she comes back a couple times, and her relationships to people are very different every time that we catch up with her.
She's almost being a different person every time we see her.
And one stage she kind of morphed into her significant other. Like they kind of became this symbiote sort of force where they were like kind of mirrors of each other. So yeah, it's really about her journey to figure out who she is as a person. And that is through relationships and people seeing her relationships and commenting on them, and maybe how her connections may be related to her lack of connection to her family. And as she gets closer to her family, as she discovers more, her relationships get a little closer. She becomes a little more considerate. She pays more attention to people. It's a special sort of thing. And then you realize that there are forces beyond your control that are kind of working. And some of them might be in your favor in a really cool way. Really, there's a moment where you realize that something's been happening in the background that it could only have come from love and sympathy for this person in a very distant way.
And yet the feeling we're left with at the very end is, like constantly adding fuel to both of those ideas. One is that you can never really reconnect, you can never really go back, and the other is like that if you're on the quest to find yourself, the answer could always be kind of around the next corner, or if not the answer, but like some amount of peace should perhaps come. And I think that we see her as having found a little bit of peace at the end, but it's not a movie that resolves. It's not a storyline that really resolves. It's not a traditional plot line. She's not a character that's real easy to relate to at times. At other times, I think just her basic humanity makes her relatable, but she's very closed off and kind of sarcastic, and she really, like you said, Ronald, she slowly starts to open up to people around her and accept the damage she's doing. And to accept that she's not a fully formed version of herself yet. Like that realization I was talking about how she kind of jumped into this soul trip and visiting her biological family. Like those things were very impulsive, and only later is like you witness how she kind of changes her ways of going about things when she realizes that she was maybe being too judgy and too impulsive. But it's still very subtle. Like what we're describing is really like two different ideas of what you can pull from this story that really just presents these scenes without a lot of commentary, without a lot of the camera telling you what's good or bad. And you can go from totally knowing what she's thinking to wondering what the heck is going through her mind in like one shot. And you mentioned her up top, but the performance by the actress is amazing.
It's pretty incredible.
As Freddie.
Now, one thing I heard was that I've been following it for quite some time. The director and Park Ji-min, who plays Freddie, she basically retooled the whole script. This was a man who wrote a story about a woman who was a adopted person that was in Paris. He had none of that experience. So apparently the script didn't reflect her experience or any woman's experience. So there was a lot of like retooling. So she helped essentially rewrite the script almost in real time. And it seems that like that relationship that she had with the director really proved to be a success, because it feels special. It feels like a special movie in that way. So I enjoyed it.
And it is one of those movies where it is the character. Like you're really following her, and she's kind of the only emotional through line you get. You'll see other people that feel like they're about to stick around or be part of her journey in a more significant way. And sometimes they're around for a few more scenes, but it's really about her moving through this life and moving forward, where she seems to be as likely to like crash in an alley after having too much to drink one night as she does to like make a plan and have like a successful career, because she clearly, it's in the middle part of the movie, she's she's working in these kind of strange circles with like an arms dealer and I don't know. There's I think it's an interesting storyline, and I think that whole thing about like an adopted person's experience is one that the more and more that I learn about it in just in life, the more I realize that we don't really understand what that person's experience is. Like we've seen so many films where someone's orphaned or someone's adopted, and so much of that's about like the idea of like, oh, at least they found a better life, or this person back home couldn't help them or whatever. And you think about how just you don't ever start to think about what's wrong with our society, what's wrong with our world, where people would need to put up a kid for adoption. I mean, obviously some people want to do that, but I mean, even saying what I'm saying right now, I feel like I'm stepping out of my depth into these areas of intense emotional reality for some people, and that for the rest of the people is like fodder for fiction. So the notion that this movie started out as a less genuine version of that and turned into something more genuine, I really feel the vagueness of what I'm talking about in this movie. Like she's not really, like, you see that she clearly had loving adoptive parents, but that doesn't answer every question for her. And it doesn't mean their intentions are pure. And then her parents, her biological father, is a mess, and there's not a whole lot for her to hold on to in the world. Not that as a person who stayed with their biological parents, you necessarily have to have an easier time of it. But I just think there are questions about the world and your place in it and where you come from that, I don't know. I grew up with answers to those questions, and I have to say I don't know what it's like to search for those questions. And so I think this movie did sort of touch. It felt like it was touching that experience that was a little bit outside of mine, and that the inscrutability of this character might be partially because she was formed by this trying to forge her identity in a situation where she doesn't really know what that means. But like in the movie, she seems very confident. I'm French, I'm not Korean. She seems kind of in denial about her biological history. But that's not where the movie leaves you. It doesn't leave you with the idea that she's totally separate and clear from that. You know what I mean, Ronald? Like it doesn't leave you feeling that she knows that either. So I don't know.
Yeah. It's a beautiful movie it
really is.
That doesn't really, if you're looking for an answer at the end, nah, but it's an amazing journey. I really enjoyed it. So.
Yeah, Return to Seoul. Well, Steve, since you didn't see Creed 3 or Return to Seoul, why don't you give us quick writs from Steve Ritter, and we'll find out what you've been watching lately.
I really just wanted to mention this new movie on Apple TV that I was excited to see. I didn't get to see it in the screening options that we got for it, but I finally caught up with it this last week. It's called Sharper.
Okay.
It's got a pretty great cast. It's Sebastian Stan is in it, Julianne Moore, John Lithgow, Justice Smith.
Oh, that's the name of that movie. I wasn't placing it earlier when you mentioned it, but yeah, I've seen that trailer a million times. It looks great.
Yeah. And I mean, it's kind of like a con, drama, grifters, who's conning who's in on what. But it does, I thought it was really good. I mean, like I'd heard a couple mixed things about it, but I think it's very well paced. It kind of is the approach to the movie is it kind of breaks out the story that we're watching with these almost like chapters where you're following one of the 4 to 5 main characters of the movie. So like as we jump into each character's story, we're kind of it's kind of patching the story together in pieces that we miss in someone else's story. But yeah, I think everybody's really good in it. I know Justice Smith has been coming up. This last year he was in the last Jurassic Park movie, but I know he's been in a lot of the clips. And I think they're really kind of pushing him in this new Dungeons and Dragons movie that's coming up soon. Right. But I thought he was really good in this, and I like Sebastian Stan a lot. Julianne Moore's great. John Lithgow's great. I mean, it's just like a lean, quick, kind of nasty little grifter movie. If you like that kind of con, what's the actual con that's going on?
Like who's conning who kind of
story. Exactly. I think you would really enjoy it. And again, it's on Apple TV Plus. If you are fans of any of the actors or actresses I've mentioned, I think, you would definitely, there's something there to enjoy, I think, for sure, especially because, there's not really a ton of these movies that come out anymore. Like, cause it's kind of like when Ron and I were talking about this before we were recording about how I watched it, like when you had mentioned that on the screening option for it, like the quality was a little different. It's like, it made me think that, this is not like a big budget thing. This is kind of like this is an example of the kinds of movies that really aren't coming out in theaters much anymore.
Right.
You know, this is like not that it's a similar kind of movie, but what I was thinking about when I was watching it a little bit was Widows. You know, and like how much I love that movie.
Oh, okay.
Just a great cast, you know, jumping storylines around a bit. You know, it kind of just made me remember that, like, you know, unfortunately that movie underperformed. And even though I thought that movie was great, I think this movie is pretty fun and pretty good as well. And, you know, it's the kind of movie that unfortunately, well, I guess fortunately or unfortunately, depending where you fall on that side of the conversation, you know, if it's coming to theaters or not, it doesn't seem like these movies are coming out into theaters anymore. Which, you know, I think sucks. And, you know, there's comedies and there's these kinds of middle budget adult kind of drama thrillers. I guess you could even put it in that category. But they're still there and they're on the streamers. So if you have Apple TV Plus and you kind of want to see that kind of movie, it's on there now. Again, it's called Sharper. And I think the movie opens on like a title card using Sharper. It's like a definition as a noun, like basically a person like getting by like on their wits alone. And it's I don't know, I think it's a kind of cool way to open the movie, because as we jump between these characters in varying degrees of you know, where they are in the con, and you know, kind of how it ends up, I think is pretty interesting too. I don't know that, you know, it's the biggest not a twist, but like I think you can kind of see some of what's coming in the movie. But even still, I think the performances are really good. And you know, it's just like people trying to take money from real rich, really rich New York socialites, or, you know, billionaires and things like that. And you're just like, okay, I mean, that's pretty shitty, but like, I'm like, all right, well, all right, get that money. I don't know, get that money.
Right.
But yeah, I don't know. Sharper's on Apple TV Plus. Definitely worth checking out, I think.
Cool.
Did you guys see anything else you wanted to mention before we wrap up?
I'm just going to very quickly say that everyone seems to be watching this, so I don't think I really need to recommend it to people. But if you want to laugh your head off, Cunk on Earth on Netflix is so funny and so good, and such a pitch perfect satire of a kind of sort of educational documentary programming that we're very, very familiar with. It's pitch perfect. It's like got so many laugh lines. And is it Diane Morgan? Is that the name of the woman that plays Philomena Cunk? Are you my fact checker right now?
Yeah. Cunk on Earth. So I watched it before it came out on Netflix. I didn't suggest it because I didn't know where to find it.
Well, Cunk on Earth might be the Netflix show. I think there was a Cunk on Britain before.
I've only seen Cunk on Earth, but
okay,
there's another one
from 2016 to 2018. The show Cunk on Britain ran.
Ooh, okay.
And I think it's actually the lineage of this, like, it has some association, like some writers, it shares some writers with Black Mirror. So if you imagine the sort of satirical sensibility of a funny episode of Black Mirror, but pushed totally towards comedic pleasure, and it's a little bit of it's got a little bit of the Ali G, you know, whatever you want to call it, where it's a fictional character or a person interviewing academics, like she's talking to people like you would talk to for a History Channel documentary. But it's like she's being that kind of idiot who asks questions that are completely insane, and the other person is having to react. And there's certain pleasure, isn't there, Ronald, in watching the way some people play along with her without being rude, and some people can't help but be a little rude with their answers. But it never lasts too long. It's got that British politeness thing going for it, where it never gets too deep into cringe comedy. It's mostly about the cleverness of just her completely wrong assessments of almost everything she talks about. Man. It's really, really funny. And it's like 5 half-hour episodes, so it's definitely got that.
Now I'm going to get Cunk on Britain. Thank you.
Well, let me know. Or I guess I might just pop on by your Plex at some point and see what's there.
Yeah, man. Grabbing it right now. So cool, man. I think you'd like it a lot, Steve. Like the humor is
I have it in my queue. I had somebody had posted about it recently. Oh, it was what's his name? John Ralphio. Why can't I remember his name?
Okay.
What's his name? Ben
Benny
Schwartz.
Schwartz.
Benny Schwartz, yeah.
Yeah. He was raving about it like last week on Twitter, and I was like, I haven't even heard of this thing. And when he usually goes on his rants about what he's watching, I'm like, okay, it must be pretty good.
Right.
But yeah, I got it in the queue on Netflix. I just haven't checked it out, but I'm glad to hear that it was as funny as he said it was.
It takes a while to get used to because you're like, this can't be like a half an hour show. But once you get into the pacing of it and you see how, it's so good, man.
Like they almost blend into the next in a way that you feel like, oh, let's just watch another one. Oh, well, let's just watch it. And then there's, then you're done in 2.5 hours. But no, it's just got that British comedy. I mean, we're about to get that next time when we talk about Garth Marenghi's Darkplace, but they just have a knack for like nailing a concept and letting it breathe, and that's it. Like it doesn't have to be a thing that supports 20 episodes a year and then turns into like, well, we're going to try to get 8 years out of this. Even though American television has moved a lot towards that British model, I feel like in recent years you don't see those long seasons and you don't see as many shows making it for super long runs anymore. But I still think the British model feel like there's something artistically intact about these shows when you see them.
Right. All right, cool. Well, that's
an episode.
Just as a reminder, so next week we'll be skipping a week and we'll be back on the 10th. But just to recap this episode, both Creed 3 and Return to Seoul, at least here in Baltimore, are opening next week on March 3rd. Creed 3 goes wide. Return to Seoul is kind of in its rollout, but it'll be here in Baltimore on March 3rd for its release here. And if you want to check out Darkplace, John's pick for the next episode, again, it's on Amazon Prime Video if you have that, if you want to watch along before that episode comes up. Movieschmovie.com is the website. You can go there to listen to past episodes or to subscribe to the podcast in your pick of the podcast platform of your choice. And if you want to watch the video version of this podcast, you can go to youtube.com/movieschmovie podcast and subscribe there as well. Again, we'll be back in 2 weeks. And as always, you've made our day. Thanks.